It's a massive honor to be speaking to you firstly. I absolutely have had my life changed by the work that you and God have done. So, congratulations to you and to God.
Thank you, my friend. This is the first time we've had a chance to talk together.
It is. I'm actually in the United Kingdom, so it's 2 a.m. here right now. And often I'm not able to make these calls, but I made a special effort to stay awake today. And I'm sure it's going to be
Well,
magical.
I'm glad you made the effort. Thank you very much, Luke.
Yeah.
If there was a way that I could assist you, if there was a way that we could turn these moments we have an opportunity to share in a way that brought benefit to you, what would that be?
Yeah, I'm sure you can. I have been writing a book for the last 2 years and it's finally finished. It's called Find Your Truth, and it's a guide to teach people how to get really connected with themselves and with God. And I mention you in the book about 6 times. And one of the things I talk about a lot is your 5 steps to peace. And that process is magical. I have a fear because in my visions that I have been blessed to see, the book sells millions of copies. And step 5 in the 5 steps to peace is about living in congruence with your highest values. And there's a fear from me that I feel might block things coming in, which is once I tell people what my values are, once it's out there for the world, then they're going to hold me to it to live up to those values. And
They will.
I I know you had a crazy journey with that too. Everyone thinking that you were going to be enlightened because you channeled this amazing work through. So I guess the question is, what's your advice on handling that so I don't block any of this amazing flow for the book coming in so it can get to as many people as possible? How do I take myself out of the equation as much as possible, or what work can I do?
Well, that's a very good question. And of course, it's a question I've looked at over and over again in the past 25 years since my first book was published. Um, I and The only difference between you and me is I did not write my first book as a book. It was an experience I was having, and I simply sent it to a publisher to test what I was being told in the dialogue that I was experiencing. But with regard to your book, Luke, um, I would step back. My first piece of advice would be to step back from any need or even any sense of urgency around any particular outcome. The book may be read by millions, it may be read by 20 people. And I can remember when my first book came out, I thought to myself, if this book is only read by, let's say, 100 people, including everybody in my family and all of their friends, that would make it about 150 people or whatever. I thought that's fine. That's fine. That's I don't have a need for any particular outcome. So I would not judge yourself or worry yourself with regard to how well the book does in the so-called marketplace. Other piece of advice I would give you is to lose all, what's the word I'm looking for here? Lose any sense of tension or fear, to use your word, any tension or fear that you may have about not living up to the principles that you've placed in the book, because baby, you're not going to.
Yeah.
One of the first things that I say to my audience when I give a lecture someplace is I often open a lecture by saying, "Hello, everyone. I'm Neil, and I'm not my book."
Mm.
To know that I'm not my book. My book was given to me as a source of inspiration and a source of encouragement, but not as an announcement of what level I have reached in my own personal evolutionary process. So you may even, if it serves you, write a little afterword or an epilogue to your book. I'm talking about a 3 or 4 paragraph epilogue, just a simple little epilogue that might say those words.
Mm.
I hope that what you found here, that some of what you've read here, has and brought and will continue to bring a benefit to your life. It certainly has brought, and I'm sure will continue to bring benefit to my life. This is you speaking as an author. However, I'm also clear But there will be times and days, moments and minutes when I will not, even in my own experience, be living up to what I've written here. Um, the best teachers in the world teach what they have to learn. Always remember that. Write that on your mirror. Get a bar of soap and make it a little bit wet, and then write on the mirror in a bar of soap. The world's greatest teachers teach what they have to learn. They don't teach what they've mastered. And the greatest teachers are teachers who continue to learn more about what they're teaching, even as they study the subject that they are teaching. And many has been the wonderful college professor or the great spiritual teacher who has come before his students and say, I just discovered something new. I just discovered something I didn't even know about this whole topic. And they share that with joy and excitement. So know in advance that you're not going to live up to all that you've written in your book, and you were never intended to, that you're writing the book for yourself. You're simply writing the book for you so that you can pick it up 6 months after it's published and read your own book and take your own best advice. And when you are clear that that's what's going on here, you will lose any tension or fear around um, not living up to what you've written in the book. Now, level three here, Luke, if I may go on just a bit, is that you may also have a fear, at least I did in my case, not that I wouldn't live up to what was in the books, but that other people, excuse me, other people will expect me to, that they will have judgments about me when they see that I am not living up to it. And uh, in fact, that has happened. There have been people who have made judgments, and some people very close to me, but most of them some distance away, who have noticed very clearly, no doubt about it, that I'm not being the person that I'm inviting myself and others to be in the writing that I've done, especially the non-dialogue book writing, Luke. I've written about 20 books that are not dialogue books. They're not a dialogue exchange between myself and the voice of God. They're simply first-person narrative books that I've written to further expand on and to further explain some of the dialogue in the conversations with God, exchanges that I've had. So people expect me, and properly so, I think. I mean, it's not improper for them to expect me that I would be more or less living up to what I've put in those books. And there are days that I am, by the way. I'm not a complete failure on that front. There are days and times when I do, in fact, show up as my best self or my highest self. But there are days that I don't as well. And I'm clear about that. And people have made comments to me with regard to that, causing me to notice, oh, this is the guy who wrote the book, and he's acting like this. So I say to them, yes, that's true. And I don't hold an. I want to say something really important here, Luke. I don't hold an expectation of myself that God does not hold for me. See, he's perfectly willing to give me, and she has told me over and over again that I have as much latitude as I need and as much time as I need. Not just as much time in this lifetime, but as many lifetimes as I need. So God doesn't have any expectations of me with regard to when I'm going to get to the place that I'm describing in the writing that I've done. And so I want to suggest that you become cognizant and aware of that as well, and free yourself, just free yourself. And only when you're not stressed and not really trying so hard to make sure that every T is crossed and every I is dotted, that you're doing everything that you say in the book that we could all do to move our process forward. Don't worry about that, because you're not going to. But allow yourself to just follow the roadmap that you've laid out for others. You can probably hear in the background, they're coming to get me right now.
Yeah, we're in trouble.
Yeah, no, because they know that I'm not living up to what I've written in the book, and they're coming with sirens blaring. They'll be outside the room I'm in right now when I walk in to drag me away for being a pathological liar. I say one thing and do another. and that's true. I do,
Mm.
but it's okay. You know, I've become at my age very okay with the progress and with the process both. I'm okay with the process of my own personal growth that I'm undergoing, and I'm okay with the progress that I have made. Stay in that place, and you'll be able to serve your readers. Because you know what? Last thing I'll say, Luke, no one wants to follow the advice of someone who's walking on water anyway. We've already proven that on this planet. We're not taking the advice of that guy very well. So if you seem to be out of reach, if people do meet you and they do encounter you in public and they do become acquainted with you and observe your behavior, and if you're way up here beyond anything any of us can achieve, they're going to see that um, you're going to be very difficult to emulate. But one thing that people do say about me, and I will give myself this, they say about me at every event I appear at, they say things like, you know what makes you effective? You're not perfect. And you admit that you're not perfect. You say it to everybody. And you come to us in all of your imperfections and your perfections. And that allows us to see the possibilities that reside within us. Because we're not trying to take the advice of someone who's so far beyond the struggles that I'm facing in my life that how could he possibly be achievable? How could I possibly emulate that? So, uh, in fact, in a kind of an interesting way, Luke, you actually serve your readers by not being perfect.
Mm.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, it really does. I like what you said about not putting myself under too much pressure, because God speaks to me slightly differently than how you explain with your experience with writing. It's God speaks to me verbally and told me that this book was available if I wanted it. And I was reading a part of book 2 the other day, and it talked about how everyone can be Christed, everyone can connect with Christ consciousness if you make that decision and you make it your life's work. And I really told God that I'm here as a vessel, and so
And
I have put some pressure on myself.
not to make it your life's work, but to make it your life's joy.
Yeah.
That's not a small shift. That's not simply a matter of semantics.
Mm.
That's a bigger shift than it might seem. Because for the first 10 or 15 years of my movement into the world as the author of Conversations with God, I really did see it as my life's work. And frankly, it felt like work because I was really struggling to live up to my own expectations, my own expectations of myself and the public's expectations of me. Then somewhere around 5 or 8, maybe 9 years ago, I decided not to make it my life's work anymore, but to make it my life's joy and to approach it with all the joy of an innocent child, having wonderful fun, trying out a new way to be, and sometimes making it and sometimes not. It's totally okay because I have a father and a mother who are wonderfully supportive and expect nothing from me other than what's happening right here, right now.
Thank you. I'm very much looking forward to getting this out there and seeing what God has planned for it and surrendering and trusting and yeah, trying to enjoy it as much as possible.
Wonderful, my friend. I hate to tell you this, but God has nothing planned for it. Because it's like God does not have plans. God does not say, "I want Luke to be the first chair violinist for the Budapest Philharmonic Orchestra." No, 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 wait. I want him to play first base for the New York Yankees. No, 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 wait, wait, wait. I want him to write this book and it's going to sell 1 million copies. See, God is not a career counselor and God has no plans for you in the sense that you just spoke it. God has only one desire for you. God's only desire, this, in my understanding, of course, I could be wrong about all of this, but in my understanding and what I've been told in my own conversation is that God has no plan for us, but she does have a desire. And it's his desire, his deepest desire, that we are given the opportunity to produce and create, to express and fulfill, to become and to experience a process by which we recreate ourselves anew in every golden moment of now, in the next grandest version of the greatest vision we ever held about who we are, which has nothing to do with our occupation, nothing to do with writing a book and having it sell 1 million copies, nothing to do with playing first bass violin for the Budapest Philharmonic Orchestra, nothing to do with any of that. It has to do with how we are being in the world and what part of the divinity that lies within each of us we are expressing. It lies within, and we are expressing. That is, we are pushing out that which lies within. As a mother would express milk uh, to feed her children, we get to express our divinity to feed the world whose lives we touch. Hate to get poetic, but that's how I see it.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, and I'll see you back here. Come back often
Yeah,
and share more with us about your experience and your process so that we can all benefit from what you're experiencing. Okay, Luke. What a wonderful name, by the way, for a book. Luke. I got three other guys out in the hallway, Matthew, Mark, and John, who would like to join you in your next book.
that sounds amazing. Tell them, send them my number.
Okay, pal. Take care.
So I'll be greedy if no one else is taking the slot, and I'll have a second go. I really enjoy when I'm writing and I feel this wisdom coming through me, and I know it's just something way beyond me. And as I'm typing away, it's kind of like I'm in an almost trance state, and then I read it back and I'm amazed by it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
something I would love to do is really deepen that connection even more so I can be a more clear vessel so the information can come through. Because I know sometimes I filter it through my own ego, as we all do, I'm sure. But what's your advice for how I can be as clear a channel as possible for this wisdom, this conversation to come through?
Don't try to be. My advice is don't try to be. You just described, it's funny because the description you gave us before you asked your question was something that everyone would love to experience. I heard you say, put my hands on the keyboard. It just comes through. It's and it's, I sometimes astonish myself with what I'm reading when I read back what just came through. Who could ask for more than that? Why do you want to ask for more than what you're now experiencing? So my answer to your question is, don't try to let what's happening be perfect because it is. You've created a whole book out of it, for heaven's sake, and you're still bringing, if I could use the phrase, still bringing through more wisdom and more clarity by the hour, if you please. So let that be good enough for now, because if you try to press and try to figure out how can I get even more, I've been there. It took me. I'll share with you a little anecdote. The first two books in the Conversations with God series were not written as books; they were just um, experiences I was having. Journaling. I was just keeping track in writing of what I was experiencing. I never thought in a million years that anyone would ever read it, but it turned out, for a wide variety of reasons, which I can explain in our next visit, how it, how those two experiences became books. But what that did was, Luke, it set up for me a huge expectation, very close to, if not a duplicate of, the question you just asked. How can I get more? How can I get more out of this? How can I go deeper, even deeper? How can I get even more clarity, more wisdom, more understanding? How can I go deeper? That was a mistake I made trying to make what was wonderful even more wonderful,
Hmm.
because it took me a year to produce what became book three, actually more than a year, what became book three. And I realized that I had to stop it. I had to get away from my expectation that, well, I've produced two books here, and people are pretty astonished at these writings, and they're getting a lot of benefit out of them. And one of the worst things that ever happened to me, by the way, and let me just share with you, this is going to sound like I'm bragging, and I promise you, I'm not. I'm telling this story for a reason. One of the worst things that ever happened to me was the day that they came to my door with a package for the publisher, a gift package, and I opened it up to see what he was sending me, what the company was sending me, and it was a plaque with on wood with a brass plaque engraved, and it said commemorating 1 million sales of Conversations with God. And I had no idea. I was not keeping track. I was not looking every week to see how many copies were printed or how many copies were out there. So I really had no idea. I knew that it sold well. I knew that the book had made the bestseller list. Fair enough. But I thought, okay, maybe it sold 50,000 copies, maybe even 100,000 copies. 1 million copies never even occurred to me. Well, of course, you know that stopped me in my tracks. If you don't think that will create expectations inside of you to realize that 1 million people from here to China and back, and I mean for China and Israel and and all over Russia, is translated into 37 languages, Luke. Now I'm sitting there trying to produce a book that now the world is waiting for. Don't be careful what you ask for. Be happy. If your description of what is occurring in your life is accurate, thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. I don't need anything more than what's going on right now. It's like making love to a beautiful woman or a wonderful man, whatever your gender preference is, and you're making love to this wonderful person, and ecstasy is all over the place. It's an ecstatic experience for everyone involved, and both people are saying, "Oh my God, that's ecstasy, that's love, that's the highest blessing, that's the grandest physical experience I've ever had." And you say, "Yeah, if I could only make it a little bit better." And your partner's going, "What are you talking about? What? What? That wasn't good enough?" So, you're making love with God right now.
I
And if and let it be okay just the way it is. And if it's going, by the way, last word, if it's going to expand, if it's going to be a process by which you go even deeper, it will happen organically, not because you're trying to make it happen.
Yeah, I was familiar with you sitting down for the messages to come through and nothing coming through, and so it took me 2 years to get the whole piece through. I guess my question was more, did you find there's certain things you can do to increase the chances of the conversation flowing, or
No, well, other than just making sure that I was quiet with myself every day and gave myself the opportunity. But beyond that, no.
okay,
I just had to be really disciplined and strict in a sense with myself, not to let too many days go by. And sometimes I did. Sometimes I slipped up, and before I knew it, a week went by, and I hadn't paid any attention to this particular part of my life. And that was not a good idea. That was a mistake because I got out of the discipline of being quiet with myself and being ready to allow what wants to arise from within me. So when I saw what I was doing to myself and when I saw what was happening, I then got very clear about the kind of discipline that it takes to do what I wanted to do. So I was then made sure that I was up each day at a time that worked for me. In my case, it was around 4:30 in the morning, more or less, and that I just let myself be quiet. I didn't have to play a certain kind of music or sit in a certain position or do anything else in particular. Just be there. And, something would either arise and come through or it wouldn't. And I was okay either way. No expectations whatsoever.
fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.